Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. So today we're just going to do another velocity banking review. But before I get started, I just want to tell you that it happened again today, where I basically introduced velocity banking to somebody new, and I was presented with what I call the velocity banking poker face. So what do I mean by that? Well, basically I demonstrated, how we can pay off houses, like 3 houses in about 10 years, right? In fact, I think this is 3.9 plus 2.9 plus 2.4. So a little bit under 10 years, pay off 3 houses. And do you know what happened when I presented it to somebody new today? No emotion, no excitement. That's what I call the velocity banking poker face. And so I think I'm at a point where by next year, I don't think I'll ever demonstrate this personally one on one to anybody anymore, and I'll just say, "Oh, watch the YouTube video," right? Because it's like if somebody's handing you the keys to the kingdom, what you do is you take it and run. What you do is say, "I'm gonna copy this and post it on the internet," or be excited about it, right? The last thing honestly want is you just to stay there and do nothing because that honestly means that I can't help you. You know what I mean? But I feel like every time I show this and there's no reaction to the person I'm showing it to, I don't I'm actually a little bit heartbroken. Like I'm literally showing somebody paying off 3 homes in about under 10 years and there's no excitement at all and I'm just don't know what to do. You know what I mean? But anyways, we'll just do another presentation or velocity banking review again. And by the way, if you don't know who I am, I'm some random dude on the internet who paid off a mortgage in 2 years and 9 months. And you can almost feel the heartbreak when I tell you that because it's just like I did it, and I don't think anybody really I don't think people believe me. You know what I mean? It's like it's I did it and I want the excitement. I want like, I can do it too. Of course you can. But I don't think people believe in themselves, and maybe that's, like, the fundamental issue of modern America, is I honestly think that modern America stopped believing in itself, like, in the early 2000s, and now we're in 2025, so we really don't believe in ourselves anymore, right? But the funny thing is that this can only be done in America. Or mostly in America. Like, you talk to people outside the US, they're like, "Well, you can't get, like, home equity lines of credit like this," or, "This is not how our banking system works," right? And if you also don't know, there's 4,000 banks in the country. So you have lots of opportunities and products and people, you can, buy the tools from or get the tools from, right? The lines of credit, and people just, like, give up after 1 or 2 times, and it was like, "Dang, it's like the Twilight Zone," you know? And by the way, here's another flex that I'm gonna do that I always do if you're new to the channel. I have over $739,000 in lines of credit. Do you see me flexing? Actually, I don't have my camera on, but I'm financially flexing, which makes me the top 0.01%. So I paid off a mortgage in 2 years, in 9 months, and yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip some steps. So if you look at the other videos, I always talk about personal debt payoff first with velocity banking, but I'm just going to skip this for now and just kind of show you the part about doing real estate with velocity banking, right? And this kind of applies to any sort of income generating asset that you buy, whether it's real estate, business, whatever. You want to buy, you're going to use debt to buy an income generating asset. And what happens is because with a lot of people, they're trained that a small amount of cash flow is okay to get into a huge amount of debt when it comes to real estate, which is unacceptable for me. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, basically, if you go to the biggest real estate investing website on the planet Earth, there's an article called Cash Flow for Rental Properties. What is average or good? I'm going to do a control F. you'll see that good cash flow is about $200 a month for one home, right? And so in my opinion, that's kind of pathetic because you're spending maybe like 200 getting a $200,000 loan just to only get $200 a month, and that's on a good day. Um no thanks, right? So how can we make it better? Well, we can make it much better, right? And here's my personal philosophy when it comes to rental real estate. If you need to actually depend on the cash flow on the rental real estate, you're not at a point in your life when you need when you're ready for it, right? $200 a month, if that's the best case scenario, that's not good. Buying that rental is not going to change your life, right? Like you need to figure out ways to boost that cash flow, whether it's Airbnb, even that has its own issues, or maybe going into a lot more units, scaling like multifamily, right? But just getting one rental property and depending on that for your entire income. Heck, I actually made $200 a month in YouTube revenue and there's no tenant that I have to deal with, right? So you have to understand that the cash flow actually is kind of like the not the main benefit of the real estate. There's like two other main benefits, which is like the tax advantages and the or actually 3, like, probably principal pay down and the tenant does pays that all for you, blah, 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 and the equity, right? So, the cash flow is kinda like the cherry on top on a good day for a landlord, okay? Now, if you think about it, let's say that even if we get the property at a discount, right? So, just kind of like this one right here, which is a $200,000 property. I'm sorry, a $300,000 property for $200,000. It's still a hard sell when it comes to cash flow. So obviously you want to get it the cheapest price possible, right? So $300,000 property, $200,000 purchase price. Okay. You want to get it at the cheapest price possible. Now, even if you get it at the cheapest price possible and you get that good $200 cash flow, okay. Well, guess what happens as a landlord? You're only making $72,000 for 30 years. So 200 times 12, right? That's 12 months in a year times 30. That's 72,000 and you'll make that as a landlord and let's say that you get that $300,000 property for $200,000 at an 8% mortgage. Well, the bank is going to make about $328,000 after 30 years. So if you just kind of look go to the amortization calculator, right? And then just say, "Hey, 360," you'll see that the bank gets paid 328,000. So in this case, who's the winner? Is it you, the landlord, or the bank? Oh, it's the bank, right? Because they don't have to deal with the tenant, they don't have to deal with property management, maintenance. They just do nothing, collect payments over time, and they make 4 to 5 times more than you. Okay. And so what's happening here? Well, it's because um we're segregating our income, right? We're segregating our income and we're just getting that $200 of cash flow and putting it in our savings. So why don't we get our income and the tenant's income and dump the whole thing into the loan or or into a line of credit, right? And so if you want to see how that works, relatively easy. I mean, we just do this. So if we want to calculate the tenant's income, right? Let's say it's $2,000 a month, and that's going to be depending on the area. And then we set aside 30% for expenses. So what we do is to calculate kind of like the net operating income is that you just multiply by 70%, right? And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our income, the tenant's income, instead of saving that $200 as our quote cash flow, dump the whole thing into the loan and then just or the line of credit and then just take our expenses out accordingly, right? And this is assuming because again, I don't actually recommend that you get investment property. This is just my personal opinion until most of your personal debts are paid off, right? So the only one here is your personal mortgage. And so luckily we have this velocity banking calculator here with mortgages to kind of figure out what happens with your income expenses and you moving some of that debt into a line of credit. In fact, we could actually buy this with a line of credit because I think they have lines of credit at 8%. So unless like the mortgage interest rate is like 6 or 5, or I would get a mortgage maybe, but then Yeah. Like, if it's 8, then and the line of credit is 8, then you could still buy with a line of credit because it's the same, what's it called? Interest rate. And you'll know what like, it doesn't make sense right now, but you'll know what I mean once you kinda start playing around with the numbers. So, let's just do this. What's our income here? It's 7,400, right? So, we have our, let's say, active income, day job income plus the tenant's income. And then also what we do is we get our expenses. So what's our expenses here? It's everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. So this is the debt we're trying to pay off. So what we do is combine these, and then I'm going to add them up, and that's going to be 2843.21. Okay. 2843.21. And then what we do is just move some of the debt into a line of credit. We'll say $8,000, right? And then we pay the first house off in 4.4 years, right? And actually, let me do this. Even if we use a 30% credit card to do this, 4.5 years, right? So 4.4, okay, 4.4, 36,000 in interest, right? So let me just kind of go here, and you see that the tables have turned. So if you want to see how much money you make, well, basically what you do is, actually, let me go here. So 7,400, 2843.21. First house paid off in 4.4. Did I screw up? Oh, right. Maybe I did screw up. 4.4 years, right? And so the way that you kind of calculate, let's say the cash flow, or the way that I would calculate it, is just assume that you're not taking any money for the first 4.4 years. So that would just be 30 minus 4.4. So that's 25.6. And then what you do is you get 25.6 years, because we're assuming we're going to hold it for 30, right? And then we multiply it by the $1,400 cash flow, right? Because the cash flow is essentially now the entire tenant's income times 70%, which is about 1,400. Okay. And then now you also multiply it by 12, because there's 12 months in a year. And then you see that as a landlord, you get about 430,000, right? 430,000. And the bank only makes about 37,000, right? Makes sense? So, and I say, okay, well, here's the thing. You don't have to be one of those guys on the internet where you buy, like, 20 houses in a year. Just buy a house like every couple of years. So the first house gets paid off in 4.4 years, right? And then the second house, we just do the same thing over again. Get a new tenant, and then we just multiply this by two, and we just rinse and repeat. So we get another $200,000 loan by get it at $100,000 discount, right? And then just rinse and repeat, and that's all we got to do, right? So now what do we do here? So what we do is we just add another 1,400 plus 140, and it's really not going to matter. Well, we just do 9,000 chunk, right? So 3.2 years is the second one. 3.2 years, and I probably screwed up. That's all right. Not going to make a big difference. And then 3.2 years, that's how long it takes to pay off the second house, right? And then we just do it again. Right? So we literally just do it again. And then let me just do this right here. So times 3, right? So that's now 10,200. Okay, so we combine this, and it's 10,200. And so 10,200, that's our income now. And then I'll just do 10,500. All right. So now the last house takes about 2.5 years. 2.5 years. And so I probably screwed up somewhere. So I kind of overestimated, or I'm sorry, underestimated how long it'll take to pay off. But that's about 10.1 years. You have 3 houses paid off. And what's the benefit? Well, basically, you get about 430,000 times 3, I'm just approximating, in cash flow. So that's maybe like 1.2 million in cash flow. And again, I'm doing cowboy math here. So in about 10.1 years, you're able to get 1.2 million. You're unlocking, I'll say, because you're not getting that 1.2 million in cash flow at once, but 1.2 million in cash flow over, we'll say, 30 years. And then what we also do is we're going to get maybe like 900K in equity at least, right? Because each house, remember, is a $300,000 house that we bought for $200,000. right? And assuming we went $200,000 all in, including repairs, then we have a little bit of buffer built in. So in about 10 years, I mean, you've unlocked, I don't know, more than $2 million, and all you had was you did it with three houses, and it wasn't that hard, and you're only dealing with three tenants, right? So much better than the pathetic $200 of cash flow, right? But I don't know. Like, I guess like I honestly don't know what the other person is thinking when there's a lack of emotion. And I honestly think it's actually affecting me too, because, as a person who paid off a mortgage in 2 years and 9 months, I'm like, is this that impressive? Right. And that's why I actually have to go to ChatGPT to ask, because if people are not reacting, then I'm trying to figure out what impresses them, right? Like what is impressive to most people. And actually, let me go ask ChatGPT. Yeah, let me ask ChatGPT. I paid off a mortgage in 2 years and 9 months. Is that impressive? Very impressive. Very. But then, when I talk about it real life, oh, house paid off in, 4.4 years, 3.2 to, let me actually do this. Um, if I pay off three houses worth about 300K each in 10.1 years, is that impressive? Extremely impressive. Oh. So why is it when I show um a new person velocity how to pay off three houses in about 10 years using velocity banking, they don't they don't really respond with any sort of emotion or ask questions. Let me go ahead and read this out loud.
That's a really insightful question, KM, and honestly, one that hits on both psychology and finance communication. Here's what's likely going on. It's hard for most people to grasp numbers that big. Paying off $900 property in 10 years is so far outside the norm that people's brains often shut down rather than engage. They can't easily map it onto their reality. It sounds either impossible, lucky, or too good to be true. So instead of asking questions, they go quiet, a kind of cognitive freeze. Velocity banking sounds complex or risky to the uninitiated. When someone hears about using a HELOC, cash flow cycling, or chunk payments to beat amortization, it sounds like financial wizardry. People are conditioned to believe the bank knows best or that mortgages are fixed obligations. If they don't understand the mechanics quickly, they default to skepticism or avoidance, not curiosity. 3. It challenges deep-seated beliefs. You're basically telling them, open quote, everything you've been taught about debt and mortgages might be wrong. Close quote. That's uncomfortable for a lot of people. Financial paradigms are like religion for some. Challenging them can feel threatening. 4. They might assume there's a catch. Even if your method is sound, people are bombarded with scams and get-rich-quick stuff online. So when they hear something ambitious and data-heavy, their guard goes up. 5. Emotional mismatch. You're excited because you know it works. You've lived the results. But they're hearing it for the first time, maybe with limited context. Their emotional energy hasn't caught up with yours yet. If you want them to lean in more, try this small tweak when you explain. Instead of leading with velocity banking or numbers, lead with a story. For example, open quote, I figured out how to pay off 3 homes in about 10 years without earning millions or winning the lottery. Want to see how the math works? Close quote. Then build the curiosity first and drop the strategy second. Would you like me to show you a short way to present velocity banking so that it naturally sparks curiosity instead of confusion or skepticism?
Okay. Yeah, I'm good for now. But, just as a normal human being, like, you should be excited. Shouldn't we all? but I feel like every time I do this, I just don't get any energy, and I feel kind of a little sad. So that's why I'm thinking maybe I just won't talk to people about this anymore. I'll just do it myself and I'll hog the glory. Okay, well, that's it for today, folks. This is Korean Atlanta mentorship. Do you have any stories about the velocity banking poker face? Because if you do, I wonder if you've tried to present this to other people and they just had that poker face, because I see through it. You know how I know I see through it? I look at the YouTube analytics and people are watch this channel for hours and hours, and, even though I post the same video, I know you're kinda fascinated by, this channel. Alright, so that's it for today, folks. Korean Lanta Mentorship, and I'll see you on the next video.